Hello and welcome. In today's video, I wanted to share with you this watercolor exercise that I did and how I went about it. When I was looking for a reference photo, I wanted something that was a bit more complex than my previous watercolor exercise, but also not a huge step up in terms of complexity. So I think this fit the bill. So I started off by sketching these little thumbnail sketches. They're very small. I tried to lay down all of the shapes that I saw in the reference photo. When I first looked at this reference photo and started sketching it for the first time, it was overwhelming. There were so many shapes, and for a second there I thought, I can't do this. This is too hard. But all it took was overcoming that fear and just sitting down and breaking it down into shapes. So after those sketches, I went ahead and sketched again on watercolor paper. I used ultramarine blue. I tried to make the whole painting just using ultramarine blue, but pretty quickly I realized that I wasn't going to be able to get the very dark darks using just ultramarine blue. So I mixed it up with a bit of sepia. That made it a little bit more of a complicated exercise because I did plan on making a watercolor exercise using just one color. I think it came out pretty good and I think it was a great exercise, but for the next iterations, I wanted to just work in one color. This was my next iteration. The reason it looks so dark is because, again, I started with the ultramarine blue and then I changed my mind and switched to Payne's gray. And I just overworked this, but I think that's okay because I just plan to use this page as much as possible for an experiment. This was my third try. I struggled a little bit with gradations from dark to light. I felt that I didn't have very smooth gradations. For example, I wanted the gradation to stop here, but when I started blending out, the dark pigment kept coming down and I wanted to have less of that. So I think I'm gonna practice blending out and controlling where the blend ends. So practice getting a smooth blend and also practice controlling where the blend blends out into white. Another thing with this exercise, I told myself, okay, this time I'm gonna do the sky, wait for it to dry, do the top mountains, wait for them to dry, and so on. But I had no patience for that. And what I did was I made the sky, then I made this dark part, then I hopped around to maybe here, and I just kept going, hopping around from place to place. Maybe one day I'll be able to have the discipline to wait for the top to dry and to keep going from the top down, but I'm not sure when that will happen. And this was my final attempt. At this point, after sketching these mountains 8 times, it became a lot easier to sketch them out. I could see a lot more nuances. It doesn't mean that this is identical to the reference photo, and that's fine by me because my purpose was to practice the watercolor and not to practice sketching a precise copy of the reference photo. I think 80% precision was fine for me. So again, you can see I had some problems with backgrounds. Again, I had problems with a nice gradation of the blend, but if I'm not too nitpicky, I'm pretty happy with it. What I like about this one is this white haze that I was able to preserve. So this was a lot of fun and I got a lot of encouragement from friends on Instagram and family. I really love working this way, sketching several times and only then going on to watercolor paper and then painting the same thing several times. I think this sort of method works really well for me and it takes out a lot of the stress of having just the one painting and sort of having a thought in my head that it has to be perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect because you can always paint it again. Going from feeling that the sketch is overwhelming and very, very difficult to feeling, hey, I can do this, and hey, I remember this mountain, and I remember what this does, I remember this part. It really helped me realize how practice just makes you so much better at what you're trying to achieve. And it really alleviates a lot of fears and anxieties, which is something I think a lot of artists or hobbyists struggle with. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it useful. I'll leave a link to the reference photo I used in case you'd like to try this yourself. In terms of the brushes I used, again, I used the same brushes as in my previous video. This 1-inch flat brush by Rosemary Co. and also this pointed round brush by Rosemary Co. On my last iteration, I used only this large brush because I realized that I was getting too finicky with this smaller brush, and I realized how much easier it is to make a flat wash using this large brush. So I hope you enjoyed watching. I hope you found this useful, and you're welcome to leave me a comment if you have any suggestions about how to practice watercolor, if you found any useful tips or methods of practicing. And thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.